The call came like any other domestic disturbance, but what happened inside the house wasn't human. It wasn't even close. Welcome to Eerie Short and Scary Stories. Tonight, we unfold the tragic events of Halloween night, where 5 officers walked into a crime scene and only one came out, barely human. I'm Detective Ray Sherman. 20 years with the badge. You'd think that kind of time would numb you, make you immune to shock, to horror, to the twisted messes people make of each other behind closed doors. I've seen husbands shoot wives in their sleep, addicts tear their own families apart for scraps of money, and even a man who buried his neighbor alive over a lawn dispute. But what I saw that Halloween night, it tore a hole in everything I believe about reality. It started with a call, just another domestic disturbance, in a crumbling neighborhood that barely noticed sirens anymore. Officer Pete Mendoza took the lead. Solid guy, ex-Marine, good instincts, good heart, kept his head down, did his job. We joked he'd probably be chief one day if the brass didn't screw him over first. There was nothing unusual in his voice when he radioed in. "Dispatch, I'm heading inside," he said. Calm, professional, like it was any other night. But the silence that followed, it was too long. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then backup arrived, and everything changed. They found Pete outside the house, naked, covered in blood, his own uniform folded neatly on the hood of his cruiser, like someone had undressed for church. His eyes were wide, glassy. His lips were moving, but barely anything came out. Just breath and the faintest whisper. They're still screaming. Behind the walls. Inside the house. God, I almost wish I never saw those pictures. The walls were painted with blood. Officers, 5 of them, slaughtered like animals. One had been strung up at her own intestines. Another looked like he'd tried to crawl out the front door before someone or something tore his spine clean out. And in the middle of it all, Pete, not a scratch on him. They didn't arrest him. No one could even say what crime had been committed. The bodies were too far gone for anything to make sense. No signs of struggle. No forced entry. No weapons. Just a radio, looping static, and Pete whispering about the walls. I was called in the next day, not to interrogate, just to listen, to try to understand what Pete had seen or what had gotten into him. When I first stepped into that interview room, he didn't even look at me. His head was down, lips still moving. I remember watching him closely, trying to find a man I'd shared beers with after long shifts. The guy who volunteered on his weekends, who once carried a girl 3 miles through the woods after she fell during a hiking trip. That guy wasn't there anymore. He looked up once, just once, met my eyes and said, "Ray, they don't live in the walls. The walls live in them." And then he laughed, just a breath, but it wasn't his laugh. It was dry, distant, like something inside him had found a new mouth to use. I don't scare easy. I've had knives pulled on me, stared down the barrel of a shotgun, even took a bottle to the face once. But when Pete said those words, when he looked at me, I felt something crawl up the back of my neck like cold wire. Something I couldn't name. Something I didn't want to understand. They said he was in shock, a mental break, temporary insanity, maybe PTSD from something he never talked about. But I've known Pete a long time. I know what fear looks like. And that wasn't fear in his eyes. That was recognition. As if whatever was in that house had followed him out. As if it was still with him, watching, listening. And somehow I was next. The call came in just before midnight. One of those nuisance reports we're supposed to take seriously, even though we know how they usually end. Halloween night always brings out the jokers. The kids with fake blood, the neighbors feuding over decorations, the drunks who think yelling counts as communication. This one was tagged as a disturbance. Screaming. No weapons reported. Nothing that raised any alarms. Pete didn't hesitate. He was closest. Gave the usual check-in. Said he was approaching the property. His voice came through the radio steady, the way it always did. Then nothing. At first, no one noticed the silence. Things get noisy on nights like that. Radios filled with chatter, background static, overlapping calls. But after a few minutes, dispatch tried reaching him. No answer. Not even a click. 6 minutes later, backup arrived. The front door was open. No signs of forced entry. Just a trail of red. Thin at first, like someone had nicked themselves shaving. Then it thickened. Footprints. Smears. Patterns on the walls. That didn't make any sense. And then came the bodies. I remember the photos. Burned into my mind now, whether I want them there or not. One officer, Jackson, was found stuck to the ceiling, like he'd been glued there. Except there was no glue. Just strips of skin, stretched tight, tacking him up like a grotesque poster. Another, Valdez, was kneeling by the fireplace. Her head was gone. Her intestines had been pulled out, threaded through her mouth, and nailed into the wooden frame of the doorway, like someone was making art, or a warning. And standing right in the middle of all of it was Pete. No weapon, no cuffs, just him, naked, soaked in blood from head to toe. His eyes weren't blinking. He wasn't breathing heavy. He didn't even seem to notice the others when they came in. Just stood there, quiet. They shouted at him. Nothing. They moved closer. Still nothing. Then, all at once, he spoke. "It's not over," he said. Voice flat, barely above a whisper. They never left. He didn't look at anyone when he said it. It was like he was talking to the room, or to something that wasn't there. Something none of them could see, but he could still hear. They tried to cover him up, get him out of there. He didn't resist. He didn't even flinch. Just kept repeating those same words over and over like he was stuck in a loop. "It's not over. They never left. It's not over. They never left." I've listened to the body cam footage. You can't hear much at first. Just heavy breathing, some confused voices. Then Mendoza's whispering begins, soft but sharp, like it's threading through the static. The strange thing is, in the background, faintly, almost too faint to notice, there's something else. A noise that doesn't belong. Not the sound of footsteps. Not anyone talking. More like a low hum, mixed with whispering. Other voices. Dozens of them. All at once. Overlapping. Chanting something that doesn't match any language I've ever heard. They isolated the audio. Ran it through filters. Nobody can figure out what it is. Some say it's nothing. Glitches. Feedback. Trick of the environment. But I don't buy that. Pete didn't just walk into a crime scene. He didn't find a massacre. He walked into something else. Something waiting. Something hungry. And whatever it was, it let him live. Or, maybe worse, it let him go. I sat across from him. Recorder on. Standard procedure. At first, Pete just stared. Like his mind was walking down a hallway I couldn't see. Eyes wide. Jaw clenched. Sweat gathering at his temples. But he didn't say a word. Not until I said his name. Then it started. He spoke low, like every word weighed him down. Said he could still hear them. In the walls. In the floor. Voices, too many to count. And laughter that didn't belong to anything human. Not a sound you hear with your ears, he said, but one that scratches inside of your thoughts. He said the house was full of it, thick with it, and it followed him out. He tried to warn the others. Said the moment they stepped inside, something noticed. Not all at once. It started slow. Whispers in the hallway. Cold breath that didn't belong to anyone in the room. Then the lights blinked. Just once. And everything shifted. He told me he watched Jackson freeze mid-step. 1 second, normal. The next, his neck cracked to the side like a puppet with a broken string. He started speaking, but the words were wrong. Too slow, too clear, like he was being read. Then his mouth opened wider. Wider than it should have. And from between his teeth came a leg. Long, thin, black as tar. Like a spider crawling out of a corpse. Pete broke. Right there. Voice cracked like a child. Said he ran. tried to grab Valdez, pull her out, but she wouldn't move. She just smiled at him, a long, lazy smile that stretched too far, too calm, and whispered something he wouldn't repeat, wouldn't even hint at it, just shook his head and stared down at his hands. I asked him if he hurt them, if any of the blood on him was his doing. No, he said, I didn't kill them. Then who did? He looked up. They did, the ones inside. I didn't understand. I wanted to think he'd snapped, that trauma had chewed up his brain and spit out a mess. But Pete wasn't confused. He wasn't manic. He was scared. The kind of fear that clings to you, that changes how you breathe. And he meant every word. He leaned forward, hand shaking, voice like broken glass. Begged me to end it. Said he brought something back. Something that wasn't finished. Something that wanted out. It doesn't wear flesh, he whispered. It wears minds. It puts us on like costumes. And just then, right then, the lights blinked. Quick. Barely a flicker. But enough to cut the recording for a second. When it picked back up, Pete was bleeding from his eyes. Thin streams. No wounds. No injuries. Just red tears spilling down his cheeks like he was crying out his soul. He started twitching. Not like a seizure. Like something inside him was testing the controls. And then he screamed. But it wasn't his mouth. It came from somewhere else. Low. Wide. Rattling every wall in that room. It vibrated through the table, through the floor, through my bones. Like a voice made from metal and ash. Like something old remembering how to speak. I stood up. I didn't remember doing it. I don't remember pulling the plug on the recorder or calling for help. I just know when the door opened, the sound stopped, and Pete, he was smiling, blood down his face, eyes empty, mouth shut, smiling. It didn't start with a scream. That's what still messes with me. You'd expect a scream, some kind of warning, a sound that tells you things are about to go sideways. But it was silent, a silence so wrong, so thick, it felt like time forgot to tick. He looked at me, one last time, eyes that had seen something no man should ever carry. Then his face went blank. Not calm, not peaceful, just still, like whatever had been holding the controls had let go. And in that stillness, without a twitch or flinch, his head opened, not like a wound, not like something broke. No, it was deliberate, slow, controlled. The skin split in a perfect line from brow to crown, and something beneath began to press forward. Something slick, shiny, blacker than ink. It glistened like it had been waiting in there a long, long time. It curled forward like a spider's leg, but the angles were wrong. The joints bent backward, then sideways, with a twitch like it didn't quite understand gravity. And then, snap, that leg shot out with a speed I'll never forget. Blood followed, warm and fast, spraying the mirror behind him, covered it in an instant. I couldn't move, not because I was scared, though I was, but because something held me there. Something in my body said, "Don't you dare move. Don't blink. Don't breathe. Watch." The leg didn't stop at the mirror. It punched straight through, shattered the two-way glass like it was paper. Came so close I felt the air split by my cheek. If I'd leaned an inch left, it would have taken my eye. I remember the sound. That thin, metallic rip in the air. A whine more than a shatter. High-pitched. Hungry. Then the door burst open. Boots stormed in. Flashlights, radios shouting. Too late. Pete collapsed. Whatever had been inside him, or wearing him, or riding him, it was gone. Just like that. And he was empty. Folded on the floor like dropped laundry. Naked. Soaked in blood. Eyes still wide. Staring up like he was looking past the ceiling. And his mouth just slightly open. Like he'd died mid-word. They tried to explain it away. Called it a seizure. Blamed the trauma. Claimed his mind cracked and his body followed. They even tried to convince me I'd imagined the rest. Said adrenaline does strange things. That grief plays tricks on tired men. But I'm not stupid. And I'm not crazy. I saw the footage. Sat there, alone in the AV room. Played it back frame by frame. Watched his head stay still. Watched him fall. No burst, no leg, no blood spray. Just Pete sitting, then Pete collapsing. According to the tape, nothing happened. Nothing. Except for the mirror. The crack was still there. Not a scratch before. But in that moment, at the exact second I remember the leg coming through, there it was, a jagged fracture, spidering out from where I should have died, and no explanation, no footage of the impact, no sign of anything reaching through. Just a mark, a scar, a truth the camera refused to admit, but the glass couldn't hide. I never went back to that room, never walked past that mirror again, because whatever that thing was, it wasn't on the tape, but it left something behind. I left the force a week later. It wasn't even a question. I couldn't go back. Not after what happened with Pete. Not after what I saw, what I felt, what I knew was still out there. But just because I walked away from that badge doesn't mean the nightmare stopped. In fact, it only followed me closer. The dreams started almost immediately. At first, they were soft, nothing too hard to shake off. But then they became vivid. The reflection in the mirror blinked when I didn't. It wasn't me. I knew it wasn't, but it looked like me, just enough to send a chill down my spine. And the sound, the scream that no one else heard, but I did. It came from radios that weren't on, from static that never should have been there. A low, guttural scream, distorted, like a warning. And every time I tried to trace it, it slipped further into the noise, leaving nothing but silence where it shouldn't be. It didn't stop with the dreams. My own hand, sometimes it feels wrong, like it's not mine. I could look at it and move it and feel this disconnection, a sensation like I'm watching someone else's arm move, not my own. It's hard to explain, but if you've ever had the feeling that your body isn't yours, you'll understand. It's like you're trapped inside yourself, watching it happen but unable to stop it. I didn't think it could get worse. I was wrong. Then one morning, I saw it. Right there at the base of my neck. A mark. Black. Like a vein. No. Like a shadow that had attached itself to my skin. It crawled inch by inch, and there was something about it, something I couldn't shake. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even ask for help. What could they have done? There's no clinic for what I was starting to feel. No doctor who could explain away what was happening to me. And then, the worst part came. When I slept, I felt it. A crawling sensation. It wasn't like an itch. It wasn't the kind of thing that could be scratched away. It felt like something moving inside me. Tiny legs skittering over my insides. Sometimes, I could feel them, waiting, watching. I never knew where they were or how many there were, but I knew they were there. And no matter how hard I tried to shake it off, no matter how much I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks, I couldn't ignore the truth. I had brought something back with me from that house. Something that wasn't going to let go. It's still with me. I can feel it. Always. Every time I look in the mirror, I can almost hear it, breathing behind me. Every time I reach out to touch something, I wonder if my hand really belongs to me anymore. And I keep wondering, what happens when it decides to come out? What happens when it decides it's ready to take over? The thing about horror is, it doesn't always happen with a scream. Sometimes, it's the quiet things that get to you. The things that creep into the spaces between your thoughts and refuse to leave. It's the silence that's the worst part. If you're hearing this, then maybe you've heard them too. The whispers. Those low, guttural sounds that seem to crawl out from behind the walls when you're alone. At first, you think it's just your mind playing tricks. Maybe it's the house settling. Maybe it's just the wind. But when it happens again and again, you start wondering if it's not so innocent after all. I remember the first time I heard it. It was a soft murmur at first, like a voice just below the threshold of comprehension. And then it grew. The static in your ears when you're alone, like someone speaking to you through a broken radio. You can't make out the words, but you can feel it, like it's trying to reach you, trying to make you listen. But you don't want to, not really, because deep down you know it isn't normal. I think Pete Mendoza wasn't crazy. Maybe that's what I used to tell myself. Until I couldn't anymore. I tried to chalk it up to stress, to the trauma of what he'd seen, but after what happened, I don't think that's it. He knew something, saw something we couldn't, and I think, just like him, I've become part of whatever it is now. Something crossed over that night. Something that wasn't supposed to be here. I used to think it was just a freak accident. A twisted set of coincidences. But now, I'm not so sure. It didn't die with him. It didn't disappear. I can feel it right beneath the surface. A presence, like it's slowly wrapping itself around my thoughts. It's using us, wearing us, learning from us. I don't know what it's planning, but I don't think it's finished with any of us. Not by a long shot. And here's the worst part. I think I brought it home. It's with me now, following me. It's inside me, inside all of us. You might feel it too when you're standing in your room and the air gets cold for no reason. When you hear a sound that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, but when you turn around, there's nothing there. Maybe you've even caught a glimpse of something you shouldn't have. A shadow that doesn't belong. A feeling that doesn't feel quite right. It's learning, adapting, watching. I don't know how long we have before it takes what it wants. I don't even know what it wants. But I can feel it getting closer. And I don't think there's a way to stop it now. So if you're hearing this, I guess you're already part of it. Whether you want to be or not. Fade out with faint static, distant screams, and a skittering sound that fades into silence. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who enjoys a good scare. This has been Eerie, Short, and Scary Stories. Until next time, stay safe and stay wary.